progress report from us, and then we can discuss whatever you have in mind. So it was Easter, right? So we didn't accomplish that much. We updated the DLLs for Windows because apparently there's a new security-related bug with OpenSSL. And oh yeah, we have release candidates for 1.2.12 and 1.4.6. So please test these releases for us. Miran can put up some links where how to download them. They're nightly built. And
yeah, we'll download links in the chat, and later on I will do it on forum also, so you can pick it up right now or later.
Okay. We did more testing with the Arc bootstrapped compiler. I think Kleiber fixed a critical bug, but it's still not working to our satisfaction because the documentation generator produces some weird error. I introduced the NK error node for hopefully better error handling in the compiler, including maybe better error messages. But however, I could only merge like the basic logic, not the refactorings that I started, because some tests crash with this after this refactoring, and yeah, I couldn't investigate too much why that is. We merged std/tasks, but I'm not sure how complete it is. I need to test it myself this weekend. And then most of the time was spent on some minor stuff coming up from the forum, like faster string utils find and AVR support, which is, I think, still not done. And then, yeah, I worked on IC. So the good news is methods work as far as I can tell, and converters work. And this is actually the first milestone. Like the first milestone in my head was, well, hello world must work, generics must work, methods must work, and converters must work. And we can discuss why it's these cases that I focused on. But yeah, the next steps, actually, I wanted to present to you some Nim find-like tool which uses IC and gives you like the list of usages of a symbol and where a symbol was defined, much like you need for Nim suggest. But I haven't been able to accomplish that. Sorry. However, the next logical step would actually be consistency checking between ROT files, because right now we compile a Nim module into this ROT file, and the ROT file has some import statements, like, for instance, my module foobar depends on system.nim and on stringutilities.nim, and we could do some consistency checking, like this module refers to this symbol in this other module. Does this other module actually have the symbol, right? Or is it missing? Because it could be caused by a bug. So, and then if we had this consistency checking, so we would be really sure that nothing is missing in these files, we should ensure that the bootstrapping works, and that is that the serialization step works for these 100,000 lines compiler code, so that it's written to disk successfully and, of course, consistently, right? And only after that we should, I think, focus on this Nim find tool in order to replace Nim suggest in the very long run. But there's an interesting related problem namely that when you want it to work for Nim Suggest like features, it should be able to give you the definition and the list of usages, even if your code has errors, right? Because you are in the editor, you are typing, the file is not yet correct, but still you want to go to definition to some symbol. And that means we need to be able to store a ROT file for an invalid, incomplete Nim file. And maybe, I'm not sure, this also means we need to patch the logic so that the ROT file kind of has a marker like this comes from this Nim file, but this Nim file is wrong. Yeah, these are my thoughts regarding this problem. And we are 26 now. And to start off a discussion, I want to know from you what what would it take for me to make you work on IC, right? So should I document the code better? Should we have, first of all, this consistency checking implemented? Should I give you, in the next meeting, should I do some live coding? Yeah.
I posted a, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I posted a link to a tweet by Andres, I don't remember his first name exactly. Starts with an A. Kling, who works on Symfony, but he Symfony OS. He dropped by the Zig Discord and he noticed that they have like a regular meeting. It's just if anyone's working on the compiler, they just have like a sort of like an hour or whatever session of like just bring whatever question if you're stuck. And there's just other compiler devs to kind of help you get unstuck. And that's just like a very straightforward, simple thing to do in order to get people who may be working on the compiler or may have like tried working on it and then got stuck somewhere. And it could be really simple basic questions, or it could be very deep questions, but there's just sort of a cadence to it and kind of a watering hole where you'll be able to kind of get help or get moving. And that could go a long way in terms of getting people to be able to like contribute to IC or any other part of the compiler, to be honest.
I'm not sure like what's your point, to be honest. Like, yeah, there are regular meetings for Ziglang for compiler dev, and what do you think this right now is?
Well, no, but the difference here is not that it's a regular meeting for compiler developers. The difference here is like literally you're working on code, you get stuck, and like, oh, here, let's like literally work. Like it's a practical workshop. Or maybe workshop's not quite the example, but it's like a known Q&A period where you can like,
okay,
there'll be someone there. They can at least like, even if it's at least rubber ducking, but they can at least work with you to maybe unblock something or the other. So I don't know. I think like Elegant Beef, for example, was working on colorized stuff, and I know he got stuck on a few areas here and there. And yeah, if there was like such a timing or place, he could get help. Like, oh, hey, maybe you should do this, and this could get you working along. Or it could be any other person from the community who could be trying their hand at a compiler patch, and they just sometimes it's just a lot easier to ask questions synchronously.
Okay, but that's still not really concrete enough for me. So let's say, I mean, we have this meeting right now, right? I could share my screen and...
Can I maybe suggest something? So sure. I would say, first of all, what needs to be done for IC?
Testing.
Okay, but is there anywhere any like issues or any document that outlines exactly what needs to be done? Like small-ish chunks that people could pick up, I think would go a long way to allowing people to contribute.
Okay, fair enough. Maybe. Yeah, as I said, or as I tried to say, the next steps would be this consistency checking for the full serialized graph. And consistency checking means, is every symbol and type of this certain ID, does it exist in the graph, and does it exist only once? And that would be my next step, really, because otherwise you might be build something on quicksand. And now, of course, the question is, who can write this code other than myself? I suppose nobody else. So, but how do I tell people how this should be done? Okay. BPR says, I find video less valuable than text. Not just any text. In the case of adding testers for IC, a how-to for some of the tests. Well, a how-to. Okay. Testament. Yeah, I mean, we do have testament tests. And there was a question. So if I install Devil, how do I test IC? Well, you use Nim Devil and you say IC on. Like this. And it turned into a smiley. Okay. Leorai says, I told you to outline the project plans to a GitHub project or an issue so that we can all see where you are in the progress. Yeah, okay. Project plans.
So about IC, should we start trying it on some small projects, like small real projects, or is it too early?
I fear it's a bit too early for that. So ideally, once we have this consistency integration checking, then I would be fine with, yeah, okay, now go along and just test it on whatever project you can find. But right now, I think it's a bit too early for that, because, yeah.
So someone needs to. Sorry. So someone needs to build the consistency checking. Is that the case?
Yes.
Okay.
Are all the tests green?
Yes.
Okay. So then there's So the
we have four green tests now. As I said, I couldn't explain why it's exactly these 4 tests, which were my initial milestone, but maybe that's not too interesting for everybody.
Oh, no, sorry, I meant like all the tests. So all the tests like under Testament that like we would run against the non-IC compiler are green as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm developing, like, I create pull requests against Nim Devil, and once they're green, it's merged into Devil. So it's not in some different branch or anything anymore.
Oh, okay. Oh, because then, because IC is like slowly kind of creeping and taking over bits and pieces of like the old way it was implemented, and that's why. Okay.
And yeah, I mean, so far, I'm actually most happy because well, of course, it's arguable, but I didn't have to introduce a single hack into the implementation right now. So it's super clean.
You asked earlier what might help. I know there's like potentially you could write a project plan and stuff. That sometimes works. I think something as simple as even just writing a separate artifact can be a little tricky, but even just marking the sections of the code where it's like over here, IC should take over. Like if it was just like XXX-IC, so it's easy to just get grep for, and then like just like in that part of the code, be like IC should take over this part doing X, would just kind of be like some of the, at least reveal the intention of what should take over, and then people can at least like find those things and be like, oh, can I make those work or not?
Not sure if it's applicable because, I mean, it's compiler /IC nim or IC/IC nim, and well, I mean, it's nim code, right? The procs, they are exported. You can see where they are called from, and but what I can tell you is that the logic is complete. Right? There are no, like, you don't have to dig into the compiler to find some new trigger for IC to make it work. This has all been done, as far as I can tell.
Oh, okay. So then it's not a matter of like bringing more of the functionality into the rest of the compiler or anything like that. No,
it's all in, that part is complete. I mean, of course, like you can say, hey, the implementation is complete. So now we have done the first 80%, and now we are working on the next 80%, which is the bug fixing.
Okay, at least for myself, like then maybe it's just a matter of like kind of a failing test to be like, let's see if we can get this working. It's probably like, at least that would focus for me, but other people are different.
Okay, so BPR is asking, please briefly explain why your 4-point approach, why only converters, methods, and generics are enough. Okay, fine. So converters are a special case of a feature that are not visible in the code, right? So a converter is like an identifier of 0 length. Like it's not visible in your code. So that needs like the rest of the logic is like, here is a symbol foobar. Where does it come from? Oh, it might be coming from this module that I don't even have in memory because it's on disk, but I have an index to this file. I know all the identifiers. So this foobar in this ROT file, I can look it up and see if it fits, and then it would get loaded on demand. But this doesn't work for converters because they don't have a name in your code when you call them. So you cannot do this. This lazy lookup step is not applicable for converters. And converters and term rewriting macros are the only NIM features that have this property, where this lazy lookup mechanism doesn't work. So that's why there's special logic for them. And of course, you need to test this special logic. Methods are special because we still do link time code generation for these. So the dispatching is still based on the old multi-methods approach, and we can only generate the dispatcher for a method after we've compiled the full program. And when you do this lazy loading of things, you need to, again, it kind of doesn't work. You cannot load them lazily. You need to know all the methods that belong to your base class and the inheritance class, so that the dispatcher doesn't miss cases. And generics are different because these are kind of like blueprints for code to be generated. Like you have, well, it's a generic function. It's not a real function. So you need to, but what you want to do is you want to avoid the code bloat. So when you instantiate a generic function of type int somewhere, you want to remember this fact that this module has already instantiated this function for int, and so that you can delegate the other calls to this function. But it's not visible, and it's not even, it's actually an implementation detail that your module uses f of int, but you want to exploit this situation. And so that's why it also needs special logic. Was that understandable? Okay, everybody's lost now. Good. Okay. So, okay. Yeah, you had forgotten about term rewriting macros. Yeah, they are not really loved anymore right now, but yeah, it doesn't matter because we need the logic for converters. And now you can say, hey, converters suck too, so don't bother, but still, it should IC should work for the full Nim language and not just the subset of Nim that I personally like. Okay. So everybody is silent, so maybe just ask questions not related to IC.
So you mentioned that the method implementation is still based on the old multi-methods. Is that plan to stay that way, or is there any plan to do something differently in the future?
Good question. Yeah, I would like to change it to use the traditional virtual function table, just like C++ does it.
I think that's a great idea.
But
I used to be totally against methods and OO, but I think the world has beaten me into thinking just do it the C++ way.
Yeah, it's tough to switch to some other model because in C++ you declare upfront which kind of methods are virtual in your class. And in Nim, it's basically, hey, the method is in the module, and the type might be in some other module. So it's not clear when do you know all the virtual method entry points for your class. When is that step complete? That's not clear. And so probably it would need some different syntax. I looked into, again, how Modular 3 does it, and the object declaration has a section methods, and then there is just a list of these method headers that should be implemented and that are virtual. So maybe like that, or maybe change it altogether to say, yeah, no, we are going to get interfaces instead, or traits like Rust does it. I'm not sure, but I personally like the C++ model even a bit more than the interfaces stuff, because when you have an interface, like in the best case, you have two, or depending on how you do it, but usually you have a tuple with two pointers inside, like one for this parameter and then one to the constructed on-demand virtual function table that's passed around. And so that's, in my opinion, a more convoluted way of doing it, because it's like, yeah, pretending that you don't know which interfaces your type is going to implement it, so you can implement it in some other file, and this is like more of a theoretical problem than a practical one. Okay, more questions. How do you enable the new concept? Just use them in syntax? Yes. Would the vtable be stored in every object, or would it be constant and there's only a pointer in each object? Yeah, probably that the pointer would be, there would only be one pointer in each object pointing to the table. Yeah, we have basic tests for concepts. There was a bug report created that concepts do not influence simple lookups in generics and type checking, and that is completely correct. And that's really what I want to do, but it's not clear when we should work on this. Right now, the hope is that the new concepts are good enough so that at least sort can be ported to use a sortable concept, and maybe the hash table can say, hey, the type must be hashable. That would also be some progress. Okay, Leorize is working on CPS. Great, yes. I think Sam also looked into CPS, right?
Yeah, actually, we're coordinating.
Oh.
So we is making progress. The transform it's starting to shape up. Yeah, that's happening slowly, but it's going.
What is the holdup? I mean, what is?
I think I'm trying to remember right now. I don't get to work on it during the weekdays, so it falls out of my head until the weekend again. But I think it has to do with right now it's supporting return types, and there's still a few gotchas around for loops. Those seem to be the two major hang-ups still. I think after that point, it should be actually should cover a very large amount of cases. Like people should be able to like write against it.
Why don't you do the transformation after the for loop inlining?
The problem then is that doing it after that, there needs to be some way to like actually tell it to catch it after that phase. So previously, get impl transform was being used, but then the type information on the var on the parameter, like the parameter of the for loop, like whatever receives the either the value or the tuple value, we wouldn't have type information. Like, and I have a patch for making that work. It's really small, but it's also like get impl transform is not really. I mean, it's a debugging tool. It's not really like kind of API in that sense, so it doesn't quite seem right. But if there's a way to like properly say like at this point in the lifetime, that would probably be a bit better. So if there is an intended way of doing that, then I'm all ears. But so far, I haven't seen it. And Leorize has also been looking at various methods that we haven't quite found, or various procs we haven't quite found something that would like time that well.
Well, I keep telling you, just patch the compiler and do a yes transformation inside the Nim compiler. I know.
Fair enough. There's. I think it would be. Oh.
It would be what?
I'm of two minds of that. Of one, on the one side, it makes sense, and on the other, like, and at least my comfort level, it kind of would. But I also understand that. I know in Leorize's case and others, they're like, if we can't kind of write this as a library and experiment with it, it's going to make it out of reach for other people to be able to work on it and kind of refine it.
Well, you don't have to write compiler code like I do. Like yours can be good. Yours can be well documented and easy to follow. I mean, yes, in the theory, of course, Nim should be able to do this via the macro transformation. But you also have to consider that, I mean, it's kind of like a prototype implementation. And once we have it working, we can see what kind of primitives or compiler features we need so that it can be moved into a library implementation. And more importantly, many people use Nim as just another programming language. And if you tell them, hey, it's now built in and has better error messages and it compiles faster this way, they say, yeah, great, sure. So not everybody cares that this has to be done as inside a macro because Nim's macros are so awesome, right?
So I think sorry, again, memory's fuzzy and work has knocked a lot of this out of my head. So I'm sure Lear Eyes will tell me I'm wrong in the appropriate places. The three main things are like, one of them is lambda lifting, although it's not exactly the same as what we do in the compiler. One of them is the bog standard CPS transform of around control structures and calls. And the other one is was a third major transform, which is different. The splitting, which is part of the function split, and then also it's the I think it's the calling convention split, and which is not exactly the part of CPS transform, but splitting is the other major aspect of, like, these are the three major ingredients, if you will, in order to make CPS work. And then after that, it gets into like, working concepts or something like it, so we can have like a continuation that you can change.
Okay. So one question: are you familiar with the C++ proposed senders, retrievers, whatever they call it?
Oh yeah, I very briefly looked at that. Like, I'm not a C++ guy. I know like very little bits of it here and there, but I very briefly looked at that, but not gone too deep. Like, are you thinking that might kind of hold the key?
No. But I'm interested in how it compares, and the way I understand it, it's they have the API design gotten right, apparently, and then of course the CPS transformation still needs to be done because just it's convenient. So but they have had some clever insights, like what was it, like if you make the if you start if you create the task and you start it, or you create it in the suspended state, and then only after somebody attaches to it, it can kind of draw the value out of this task. Then you save the synchronization step and the reference counting, and you can keep it scope based and stuff like that. So you don't need the atomics nor the reference counting. And yes, that is the proposal, but there are plenty of talks on YouTube about it. And
yeah, I just need to make sure I have the right keywords and stuff like that. The rest is like, yeah.
And also, I think this is not the most recent proposal.
Okay. Yeah, it's from 2019. I'm sure there's something a fair bit newer, but I just want to make sure I'm in the right territory.
Yeah. Okay.
I know the Kotlin ones as well kind of explored some of these bits. Honestly, the CPS code is like, it's scary at first, but like after every read, it's made way more and more sense, and like it is quite nicely like documented and stuff. It just takes a bit to kind of get your head into that space, because it's very, like, the concept is so small and it's very easy to just walk past it. So you have to like really slow down and be like, oh wait.
Yeah. And apparently it's also very much related to SSA, like static single assignment representation.
Yeah, so it absolutely is. Because CPS is, it's as low level in general as that. It relates to a lot of these things.
It's not completely clear to me how it works, because in SSA you have these phi nodes, and they are basically like not deterministic, right? So you say I is phi of I1 and I2, and so you don't know. It's like it's either one of these, right?
Yep.
So that's non-deterministic, and of course this is not a model that you can run, right? But CPS is still a model that you can run directly.
Yep.
So I missed something in this landscape.
I think the analogy might not be that strong. At least with well, like at least with CPS, like the idea being that like well, I guess maybe one of the similarities or the like surface level similarities with SSA is the idea of like as soon as you hit any sort of control flow or pass any sort of passive control, whether it's a function call or waiting for a function call or any sort of like if or loop or what have you, you end up in a situation where it's like, oh, that's a point of control, and so you kind of have a cut point right there.
Yep.
And that's sort of like the first, I guess, idea that, or at least that I see, that where it starts resembling SSA in the sense of like your code breaks apart, not necessarily into data logic, but breaks apart into data, computation, and flow.
Yes, but a cut point is not the same as a join point, and the phi nodes of SSA are about the joins.
Yeah,
so.
The join points are. Well, I think there the where it resembles SSA is that because the schedule can be changed, you statically you can't determine which one's going to take over at this point. But it will be one of the valid ones that or one of the candidate ones may come in and execute. But the one that will actually run in, like, if you're expecting a return value and actually return, which one that will be, you just don't know when. And so I think the SSA resemblance is more around the runtime characteristics, less than the actual, like, the way it lexically breaks up the transform itself.
Yeah, sure, but if you don't have phi nodes, you don't have SSA. You have something else, right? So,
okay.
and I've read often enough that, hey, just transform it into SSA, and it's like this is already then in CPS, and I don't. So far, I don't
seen that. Okay, let me go read some of that. That's an interesting kind of lead. I've only seen that in passing a long time ago, and it never really quite stuck. So maybe you and I had a similar experience in that sense. Okay,
so there's a different question about object variants and allow usage of the same attribute in different branches. So there is this idea from Kleiber where it's like, hey, you can have a second case construct in your object using the same selector, which doesn't get a type annotation. So we know it's the same field because it's not redeclared. And that proposal did win. So now we are waiting for somebody to implement it. And I should probably put it up as a separate RFC that is accepted, because it's, in my opinion, it's the most elegant solution and also quite simple to implement. And I'm not quite clear if that's really what you want, because like many people agree that case objects could see some love, but it's not everybody wants the same. They're basically, I think, so there's the people who want to be able to reuse the name so that they don't have to come up with a new name. And that's, I think, what ML and Rust and everybody else is basically doing, is like, you can reuse the name because there's always a guard that guards this access to this field, so it's never ambiguous. But this cannot be done in Nim because you can access the field without the guard, even though that's probably a bad idea. So, but then there is this different proposal that where you want to, yeah, basically you want to, okay, find if the field has the same type. Yes, sorry. Yeah, exactly. So in Rust and ML, you can have fields of the same name with different types because they are guarded. And in Nim, you cannot do that. But if you are fine that the field has to have the same type, then I'm sure Kleiber's solution will suit you very well. Okay, and PPR said, yeah, CPS might be one of these features that should be part of the language core and not built as a macro. Yeah, I think it's way too early to decide on that, but I only want to ensure that you are productive with this prototype implementation. And if you are unproductive because the macro system in Nim isn't there yet, you should write it as a compiler extension. And yeah.
I looked at some of the compiler plugins, existing ones. The part that I didn't get a chance to quite figure out is they run at it's basically a callback API that seems to run at a particular time. But I wasn't quite sure if like how much control one could have over that timing, or like how fine-grained that timing is, because like some parts of CPS transform are honestly like way easier like happening early because it actually just, you have to handle less, and then some parts are way easier like happening later because the language, like as far as the compiler is concerned, Nim is heavily desugared at that point. For loops, for example, being one of the prime examples. And so I was kind of wondering like how to discover or figure that out.
I think well, I could be wrong, but look at the chat, please. If this thing were allowed, right? If you could like lift this for loop variable into an environment inside this construct already, then it wouldn't matter when you desugar the for loop. And then you should be better off like doing the CPS transform early in the pipeline.
Yes, that is correct. One issue with that is that foo, if it's an iterator, can have side effects. And then you run. So,
what do you mean?
That's the tricky part.
What do you mean by side effects?
Oh,
you mean it has state, right?
Yeah. Well, it has state, or it could issue IO potentially, and so yeah, effectively we either have to go into the iterator bodies and start doing transforms in there, or we'd have to go after the transform, we'd have to go like, and once it's turned into a while loop, we'd have to go and poke around in there and change things, because yeah, the iterator could, I don't know, make a database query, or it itself internally could have branching logic, in which case you run into the same sort of.
So maybe you would like maybe it would be helpful for you to just add some constraints there. and just disallow side effects.
I think what the C++ people found out in Clang when they implemented the async proposals was that you need to do this transformation as late as possible in the pipeline so that all the other optimizers still don't have to bother with these resumption points and splits in the throw, right? Because that really hurts the optimizers, because then they cannot reason about the code anymore. And probably we will find out the same thing here, which means you would do the CPS just exactly like after inlining and for loop elimination. And then you simply have to deal with the fact that, yeah, the AST is worse, like bigger for you to process. But
so this, I mean, at that point, it turns into sort of the mid-level IR or the low-level IR sort of idea, right? Where, I mean, we'll lose some options for optimization because a bunch of things are desugared and we can't quite reason about them. I mean, that's not the world, but I'm just saying, like, that's effectively the sort of the thinking here, right? Like, where it's like you go to a more desugared, simpler language. Okay.
Yeah, and also keep in mind that we are in the same position already because of like what Arc does with its control flow graph.
Yeah, the DFA. Yep, I've worked a bit on that.
So Arc is happier with a non-transformed, not ZPS closure iterator or proc or whatever you want to use. So after destructor, even after destructor injections, you should probably do CPS. However, there might be cases where it's not correct anymore and you need to duplicate the destructor calls, but I think this should be handled by the general CPS transformation automatically, because in the end, a destructor is just another function call, right?
It is. Yeah, I mean, in some ways it would be easier if there was like sort of a Nim 0, which is like compiles down to only procs and struct or objects. Like that's like basically like all the features are gone at this point. No one wants to write it directly, but a lot of the transforms would be easier, probably, at least as a starting point there.
Yeah, sure. What is a bit annoying is that this small core that we all dream of, that's the only, like all the other language constructs are gone, is that you need to watch out not to lose crucial information. For example, you can easily lower an object constructor to a set of assignments to this object, right? But then you lose the property that it's afterward the variable is complete, right? It's
been fully initialized.
Exactly.
Like there's a transactional aspect to it.
Exactly. And then you would need, and it matters quite a lot for depending on what you want to compute. And then you would need to recompute this information that was there in the very beginning in the program, but you lost it because you lowered it to something that is worse. And there are a lot of cases where this can happen. And in general, my philosophy is that you really want the high-level structure to be preserved. So that also means, for example, that you don't want to lower the control flow to go-to statements, because right now we don't have the go-to statement in Nim, and it's awesome because, for example, there's a paper that says here for a structured programming language with break and return statements, you can compute SSA directly from this. Whereas when you have goto, you need to do the traditional SSA construction, which is super convoluted. And so, yeah, that's like in general, the low-level representation in my mind is just worse. Like, and you can also compare it to, for example, here is memcopy, right? The CPU, like you tell the CPU you want to copy memory from there to there, and the size is whatever bytes. And if you have this in one instruction or a couple of instructions on the CPU, you know what it does, and you can schedule it, you can parallelize it, you can do on the silicon, you can handle it in a most effective way. Whereas when you transform it into a loop with pointer incrementations everywhere and comparisons and whatever, and manually unrolled because it must be fast, then the CPU can basically just, well, it cannot do anything. It has to give up and do what it's told precisely. And that's just worse. It's naive to think that this is kind of superior. So yeah, this IR would need to preserve much of today's NIM, like object construction, structural control flow. Case statements can also not that easily be computed into if, because you want to compile it into switch statements and you don't want to pattern match against the ifs to see if it can be transformed into a switch statement. So yeah, there is a discussion about package management going on. This is beyond my expertise. Yeah, but
about the package management, right? So I develop a bunch of packages, right? Pixie and Fidget, right? And it seems like we just can't get our packages straight. Like whatever we do, it just doesn't work. Like I don't know. It's kind of weird. Like we were thinking maybe we should just not have a bunch of packages, but just have like a monorepo. Is that the solution? Because right now the solution is to always kind of develop on head. Everything that doesn't support head basically doesn't work. So it's like there is almost no package versioning for us. Because whenever we change one package, we have to like update all the packages to kind of work with that package. We can't we can't do like in piecemeal. So it's almost like a monorepo. I don't know. It's weird for us. We're kind of stuck on this. We don't know what to do.
Sorry. I mean, I like monorepos for the same reason. But the question is, do you mean for your projects and the broader ecosystem, or do you mean people are still living on NimDevil and only NimDevil is actually the Nim version that works for most things?
No, I don't think it's about NimDevil.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's related to Nim versions. I think it's related to like how package resolution works and how it doesn't like make sense to us.
Okay. Well, I wrote NavApps a couple of years ago, and it's partly maintained, but it still contains my ideas of how it should work, which is basically you want a tool that manages a set of directories, each of which is a Git repository. What's my opinion on Nymph? Yeah, I like it. I mean, it took some time to grow on me, but it has its benefits. Okay, different question.
Like what? What benefits does it have?
Like, you know that the packages are developed in kind of lockstep, that they work together. And look, your solution is to this dependency hell is to duplicate the dependencies, and so that you can have more the package in 3 different versions and all compiled into the same binary, and then hopefully with some super smart linker you get rid of all the duplicate code, which I mean I like it. Because I enjoy working on this deduplication logic inside the Nim compiler. I would enjoy it. But that's still...
Well, that's just one of the solutions. I'm not saying we should go for this, but I mean, the problem that I think is happening here is that the dependency resolution in Nimble is very, like, there's a very simple algorithm, because when I developed it like 8 years ago now, there was just no need to do anything more complicated. And Nimble doesn't even have a graph of the dependencies because it has to download each package one by one. So that's why you get into these situations where you get, like, it installs the latest package because it sees that it needs to get, I guess in this case, vmath, it gets, 2.0, and then it adds that to its list of dependencies.
Yes, as far as I know, this is not that's correct. Like, you do not know the dependency graph until it's kind of too late. That's the nature of the problem. So you cannot really do much about that one. But
well, you can. You can get you can save the dependency graph somewhere, like on nimble.directory, for example, or some other service. Obviously, that makes things centralized, which isn't ideal either, but there's definitely solutions here.
Yeah, I think another solution is maybe read all the Nimble definitions of all the libraries you're trying to install. And then once you read them all, you go, oh, okay, this works, this doesn't. And then download the actual packages, right?
Yeah. I need to leave soon, by the way, but of course you can continue. So what I wanted to do is to look into how Maven Central does it. Yes, Java, I know. Because apparently they have something that worked for 2 decades before NPM came along and told us that Zemver works. So that's why I wanted to look into it, but I never found the time to do that. And yeah.
Is there a particular part of Maven that you're thinking of? Like, I've also used Maven and NPM and stuff, and there's a bunch of stuff that I frankly like way better about Maven.
Well, I don't have much experience with Maven. When I used it years ago, it was just this XML POM shit. That was annoying. But,
honestly, that I, having used a bunch of them now, I am very grateful for that XML POM shit because it's just data. It's really stupid.
Okay.
But sorry, your point earlier.
Yeah, but like I don't know, like, okay, so I have a package, I upload it to Maven Central. It's probably keeps the checksum and the hash, and then for good, right? And
yeah, it's a content address. It's kind of a name.
Yes, and when I release a new version, I need to re-upload it to Maven, and then Maven says, yeah, okay, there's a second version of this now.
Yep.
And and then how do I get it out? Because maybe, I mean, yes, I don't. Maybe there's a security bug that I want so that I don't want people to use this old version. But maybe that's just not.
That part I don't remember as well, but I do know, like, typically it'll just supersede the version, and you kind of just use the sumver to kind of do that. The undoing the publishing, I'm not super familiar with that part. But yeah, you can push a newer minor, or like the lowest, whatever it's called, version number, and that's like one way to kind of just move to the next one. And in terms of resolution, like, Maven uses the shortest path approach for resolving dependencies. And then otherwise it's you can have like a build of materials, which you can use to like lock down dependencies across packages. So you can just be like, whenever you encounter this name, it's always resolves to this version. That's how you handle dependencies in Maven.
What do you mean by that uses the shortest path? What
so the way the shortest path works is, like, if I have a jar or sorry, like, yeah, if I have like a package and it says, oh, I need the like Jackson, right, which is like the JSON parser that's quite common. it will look for starting from the thing that's asking for it, it will walk outwards, looking for where it first encounters like an inclusion of that package, and it will then use that version. Like it'll say like, okay, that's my dependency, and if anything else also has that, whichever sort of came in the first order and has the shortest path, that will be the version that wins. And that's the auto resolution algorithm. And you can either fixate that using things like excludes, or you can fixate it by providing what's called a BOM, or build a material, which says whenever you encounter this name, this is the resolution order, regardless of what a package may or may say the version that it wants.
Okay.
And those are the two major mechanisms by which you can control that.
Okay, and does it work better than other solutions that you tried?
Yeah, I think so. It depends a little bit on what problem you're trying to solve, but like, I mean, I've solved hairy problems with Maven, and it seems to be okay with, and it's not that bad. Like I do find the declarative nature to be like rather easy to use. Sure, it's an XML and that might be verbose for people, but okay, like that's just a serialization problem and a representation problem. But otherwise, build the materials and a simple resolution algorithm that you can kind of reason about very easily. It's easy. Yeah, that's straightforward.
Okay. So,
I think personally for package management, like if it's kind of nimble and its resolution, like if there's a little bit of a date, it's been a while since I looked through NimbleCut, but if I think it's sort of the data model is kind of elaborated a little bit and kind of get strict about the core algorithms around resolution for it, it might just be easy to see where like some of the issues are. But if you have code bases which are spread across Git repos for various reasons of separation, but they're frankly changing together, then yeah, you're going to have to, like, the transaction of change is going to spread across the Git repos, and that's not going to be fun, in which case you probably don't want to split them apart. But in other cases where you genuinely have different packages with different rates of change, then it may just be a matter of, and if Nimble's not working out for you, then it's just maybe a matter of like kind of looking at the core data structure of what Nimble should have and seeing if there's an issue there.
Yeah. So I actually wrote a SAT solver in my spare time, which I heard was required for package management that I could share, but I'm not convinced that the SAT solver is really a good solution to this problem, because then you end up with a system that just picks a version, and well, theoretically, this is the correct version, assuming that the version requirement dependencies are all correct. And that's, for me, that's the big mistake, really. Like, the version is just a number; it doesn't mean anything. And when you are lucky, every dependency got the version dependencies right. And when you are not, then you need to patch it. But even if you got it right, it's just so much mental effort and maintenance effort that you need to keep doing, and I'm not convinced that this is required, to be honest. And there is one more thing, and then you can. There was a remark that the requires thing should be parsable without Nimble, like Nim evaluation. Yeah, actually, I've wrote code to do just that already, so I can share this snippet because it's really simple. And then you would need to have some little check when you do the full parsing that the requirements doesn't use Nim features that are hard to evaluate, but that's pretty easy to do. And I think 99% of our packages use requires with string literals, so nothing would really break in practice. So that would be easy to do, and we don't need to bring back the ini files or anything like that to accomplish that.
True. Yeah. I think we should definitely try this. The only concern I would have is that then you have these edge cases where only 1% of the whole ecosystem uses them, and it's
just look at the chat. 19 packages are affected.
Yeah. Most packages just specify the name normally, but there are some like HashiScribe, for example, which have very curious definitions.
But we can patch these.
Yeah.
So yeah, and
yeah, honestly, I would be tempted to explore an even more radical idea of completely getting rid of Nim script evaluation, and for tasks, just compile them to Nim code and do it that way.
Fine with me. I've said it some other time. The Nim script evaluation thing is probably my fault. Like, I pushed hard for this feature. I still believe in it, but if you overvote me and say, no, this is a bad idea, I mean, I don't have that many Nimble packages that I need to patch then, so fine with me. I'm not blocking any progress here, I hope.
Sure. One thing that does keep being on top of mind for me is that we are still waiting on this patch from status to implement log files.
Yeah.
And I tried to get in touch with people about it, but I wasn't successful. So if anyone in this room can help push for this so we can finally get it,
I will try again, but same, like I couldn't really establish contact. But I will try again.
Yeah,
next week.
Because in my mind, with log files, a lot of the problems that Treeform and others are experiencing will be easily workaroundable, as in, if you don't get the right dependencies, you can just modify the log file manually in the worst case scenario, and it's very easy to get what you need.
I fail to see why that would be, to be honest, because like he said, I think like log files are for applications and not for libraries, which do not know, which cannot nail down precisely the requirements.
Yeah, so when you're testing the library, that's when you have a log file. When you're compiling any application that uses the library, that's when you use the log file.
Yeah, our problem isn't that we have problem with these dependencies, is that people using our stuff have problems with our dependencies, and we're powerless to fix that. On our side, we could just check out the Git repos and be done, but we can't really tell people to do that because that's not the Nim culture, right? Nim culture is to use Nimble to install everything, and then it doesn't work for us, which is weird.
Well, from what I've written in that GitHub issue thread, I think one thing that you might be able to do is to just kind of have this pseudo log file definition that you can give to your users, which just outlines each of the exact libraries that need to be installed one by one, and use that as the workaround.
Yeah, we also need to specify that in the important packages in the tester, right? I didn't it just kind of the tester probably will not read the needed libraries to install and test Nim with, right? It just kind of it'd be nice if it just worked with Nimble, then everything just works, right? That's all we want. Nimble install Fidget and it just works for you, right? We just trying to figure out how to make that possible for everyone.
So, people, I have to leave. It was a pleasure to talk to you, as always. And since it works so well, we will have the next meeting in 2 weeks. But also, as usual, feel free to keep discussing things. But I need to go now. So see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Anybody?
Any plans for the weekend?
Yeah, some people left already.
Yeah, back to Treeform's question, or yeah, I also think that Nimble install should work for your packages without do it manually because of the important packages testing. So yeah, we need to figure out how to do this.
Sure. I mean, I agree. There will always be edge case bugs that we just don't have the time to fix immediately for people. And I think log files will give a way to just work around it.
Isn't like in theory, if you specify in your Nimble file, hey, I want this package exactly, isn't that like a log file? Why are
Yeah,
like,
exactly,
files
and
needed?
that's what I mean. That's what you should provide for your users. Like the only thing you need to remember is to order the requires lines properly, because if you put fidget first, Nimble is going to try to get all of its dependencies, you know, recursively. But if you give all of the essentially leaf nodes in the dependency graph, then you can make sure that Nimble installs exactly the correct versions.
Yeah. Okay, I see. Still,
But yeah,
it's really strange for us. It took for a while for us to figure this out. I mean, we were like, what's going on here?
I mean, yeah, I understand that it's a pain in the ass, but until we can, well, A, get a proper dependency graph into Nimble, and B, essentially implement a dependency solver based on that graph, it's going to be like this.
Well, is it really a solver? You just have like, if you download the entire graph and you just go, okay, VMath, right? You have a maximum and a minimum. You just walk all through all the nodes and take the minimum and the maximum, right? And you slowly like narrow it down. Doesn't really need a solver, right?
Well, by solver, I just mean the algorithm that does what you describe.
Okay.
And
okay.
yeah.
I thought you meant something like more complicated. Never mind.
No.
Solver sounds complicated. It's one of those words that sort of triggers something.
Miran,
Hi.
have you seen the question in the chat about the SSL issue?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and I think it should, but that's exactly why we released these release candidates, just to double check if everything works as it should. We think it does, but we were proven wrong a couple of times before. So yeah, please test it and report if it doesn't.
Yeah, we got bit by the SSL cert thing as well, and we were like, "What's going on here?" So we wrote an entire library to work around it.
Nice. By the way, it would be quite nice if we could test these using ChooseNim. Wonder if we could do that somehow.
I don't use ChooseNim, but can you just take head of some branch? If you can, that's basically it.
Yeah. Did you not build any binaries for this release though?
Yeah, binaries are provided as nightlies, but I'm not sure how ChooseNim works. So if you can just do ChooseNim version 1.4 branch, that's it. If it picks the latest commit, you are basically using the release candidate.
I think it might. Yeah. I didn't actually implement the nightlies in ChooseNim, but hopefully it picks it up.
Yeah, I sent a link to the one, like from the forum post, the one that's tagged as the release candidate, and it's basically just one of the nightlies, like one of the specific nightlies.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess ChooseNim could have a way to say release candidates something, and then go pick the It's not tagged in any particular way, though, I think.
Yeah, maybe it would be even nice to just implement, like, if you type a URL to a nightly release, Jusnim just knows what to do with it. It just grabs it for you.
Yeah, that'd be nice. But I mean, it would be cool to be able to type something like, something like that.
Yeah.
And have it go fetch it.
Yeah, I think that would be actually doable today, because you can.
Yeah, as long as it's tagged, right?
Well, the way this works, yeah, I think it would. I don't know if it would pick it up as a version or not. If it doesn't pick it up as a version, then it'll pick it up as a channel name, so it won't actually pick it up as a tag. So you could, like, the channels are just, like on the Nim website, they are defined and they just point to a specific branch or commit. So we could just define it that way.
Right.
But yeah, it would just take some manual labor to define it, I guess. Maybe I'll look into that. Anyway, I should probably go.
Just one quick sort of Choosnim related question. I know we discussed this earlier, but I can't remember the conclusion to that. So, for example, Nim LSP, which needs to be the same version as the Nim code you're looking at. It's kind of confusing to use that with Choosnim. Like if you change your Nim version with Choosnim, then you can have your compiler giving you weird error messages.
Yeah.
Or you can have your editor saying one thing and the compiler saying another thing. And I was asking if there was any way we could add like a hook or something to Choosnim. So that when you do Choosnim, this and this, it would also like rebuild the tools for that version.
I see.
Or pick them if they're already built.
Yeah, I suppose you could do that. Yeah, I think there are definitely ways to do it. There might just need to be some thought given to make sure that it's not exploitable.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because I can imagine something similar to Git's pre and post receive hooks, which live, in Git repos, and maybe just having one that lives in the Nimble directory that Choosnim just executes when it switches the version. But then if an attacker adds a hook in there, then that might go bad. I don't know. But yeah, feel free to suggest a way to get the hook and make a pull request.
Yeah, I think I had something in the issue on Choosnim where I mentioned this.
Okay. But yeah, I think you did.
Yeah, it's been a while since I. Wait, is Choosnim on your? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in general, though, I would say, I would urge you to not just build Nim LSP with the compiler. I would urge you to just launch the compiler as a process instead.
Well, yeah. I mean, the way it does it now is that it uses Nim suggest as a library. And that is basically in order to. So it's way simpler for me to work against like a Nim API than to work against a process, and then I would have to write like a parser and parse the input from Nim suggest, and then someone updates Nim suggest, and that breaks Nim LSP.
Yeah,
and then
but
I have to have branches in my code saying like, oh, if you have Nim suggest this version, that version, then you need to use this version, that version.
well,
it's just much easier to compile it all into one program.
Nim suggest shouldn't do that. I mean, the format it exposes, it should be backwards compatible. Like that should be part of the promise that we make to people and to tools. I mean, other tools can also use Nim suggest, right? So it would break all of them. But I would say there's multiple advantages here to doing it this way, and I think they overcome the need for you to write a parser, and that is that, well, you solve this problem that you mentioned, which is when choose Nim switches Nims, and you also gain a lot of...
That is only because Nim suggest sort of has this feature already, that it gets updated when you update, or when you choose.
Yeah, but that's because it's a process that lives within Nim, right?
Yeah.
But the other one is, I think, the most important one, which is stability. Like the main problem with Nim suggest right now is that it can go off on you and start allocating lots of memory. If you are managing the process yourself, then you can detect that and just restart it. I think that's really useful.
But then I need to write a whole management engine thing to
but that's easy.
That...
You just check if
I have to write it. I mean, this is already managed by the editors. So the editors will launch NimLSP and make sure that that doesn't crash.
But they don't. I mean, they don't do a very good job of it, from what I've seen.
Well, neither would I. To be fair.
I mean, I think you would. Like,
well, I mean, what's
the complexity? Like, you just check. Like, is memory usage over X amount? Okay, restart. Is CPU usage for the last 5 minutes on average greater than this amount? Okay, restart. That's it.
Yeah, but still, that would be like twice the amount of code that is in NimLSP already. NimLSP is really simple. It's just a translation of, like, it's just an output format, basically. Just like it reads commands and it outputs whatever Nim suggests returns, instead of outputting it as text.
Sure, but I mean, you now basically have two different applications that implement the same thing, just with different interfaces, running at the same time, which also seems maybe not the best use of resources. But anyway, I need to go.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
Sorry. But I still think you should definitely consider it. I mean, even if it's twice as much as what you have now, it still doesn't seem like that much more code.
I started out doing it that way, and then I switched to doing it this way. I even had to patch Nim suggest in order to make it possible to do it the way I'm doing it now. So I've definitely considered doing both things.
Why did you switch then?
Because I thought it was a better solution.
I see.
I mean, I have considered it, and that's why I switched. So, I mean, I could consider it again, but I'm pretty sure I would fall down on the same solution.
Okay. Well, yeah, I still think you should consider it. But anyway, that's all I'm going to say. I should get going.
Yeah, yeah.
See you later, everyone.
Yeah, see ya.
See ya, bye.
Bye.
So, should we conclude this meeting? It's now, I think, 1 hour and 30 minutes, or does anybody else have something to discuss? But now with Dom gone and Ara gone, I'm not sure if I can answer your questions, but fire away.
I mean, I did kind of want to talk about like AVR stuff, but I'm not sure if there's any point to that.
You mean you want to ask questions, or you want to enlighten us with some AVR stuff? Or
Well, there are kind of a question or request, I guess. So basically, I keep running into bugs. So in the last the switch from, I guess it's the last two versions, from 1.4.2 to 1.4. Oh yeah, no, that's one version. Yeah, anyways, they have introduced like some code generation changes, which completely breaks parts of the stuff I've been using for AVR. And the recent topic on the forum called AVR support has a similar story where it's sort of, it breaks, like something has broken on Devil, and I guess now in the RC as well, but it works on 1.4.4. And
0.2, I guess.
No, 0.4. Yeah. And if you check out the AVR, it's a topic on the forum on the front page, just called AVR support ?
Mm-hmm.
If you just scroll to the bottom of that, you can see we figure out that you can get it to run if you use 1.4.4, but if you use Devil, it doesn't work anymore. And I mean, the point is basically I would want Nim to maybe have some more tests for AVR stuff, or this code generation stuff in general, so that this won't break, or at least not break as frequently.
Yeah, sure. We need more tests for that. And I just checked for two commits you mentioned. One is backported to 1.4, from what I can tell. So I'm not sure if that the second one is causing problems or solving problems, but the first one is not backported. So it might still work with 1.4.6.
That's a good point. Yeah. I mean, I can check the RC, but it didn't work earlier today. So on yesterday's nightly.
Yeah, I just checked. It's from January, so it's part of the earlier version. So it should still work in 1.4.6 as it worked in 1.4.4. So if it worked there, I really hope it still works. It should, from what I can see. But yeah, as I said earlier,
it did not work on the Devil branch. But that is not. Yeah, no, never mind.
Yeah, 1.4 branch is not Devil. Yeah.
Federico here. In the past, I've been suggesting putting together a build farm for embedded stuff so that we can test it continuously. But at the time, there hasn't seems to be enough interest. Maybe now things have changed.
Yeah, I mean that could definitely be cool. I mean, for this, for the issues that I've had, I think most of it would have been picked up simply by compiling it. So just compile it with the AVR compiler and on a normal x86 machine.
Okay, yeah. We need more tests, either via what you said, Peter, or yeah, we can. I don't know how this farm would work, and is it free to set up, or how is it run, Federico?
Well, for compilation, yeah, of course we can compile on GitHub Action and so on. But for some things, we might consider running on the real hardware. So that means that somebody could have some small devices that will receive automated deploys.
Yeah, okay. I'll pass the idea to Arak and I'll see what he says.
In the past, Dominique was running a build fleet on some host only for x86. Maybe ARM as well.
For embedded targets?
No, at the time it was only x86 and I think ARM.
Ah, right. But yeah, something that would pick up these things. But it looks like more and more people are interested in AVR and using NIM on microcontrollers, which is cool.
So nothing more?
Not really. Someone is talking about Karax in the comment section.
Yeah, they posted quite some time ago.
Yeah, I saw that.
And another question was about Nim organization. Is it a foundation or a personal project or something else? I mean, we don't have a foundation, but it's like it's a community project, but as I guess if you donations depending on where you donate, so some of them go directly to ARC, some of them go to like the Nim Open Collective organization.
Wait, so who has who have access to the Open Collective stuff?
I think it's
Arak for sure, and I'm not sure if Dom has, but Arak for sure.
I think it was someone else as well.
Right.
Yeah, I see comments for Nim Foundation, and Arak and I have been talking about it for a bit. The problem seems to be, he said it's not as easy in Germany to make foundation or something like that. His accountant said to him, maybe it's better not to do it or something like that. So yeah, maybe it is time for an Nim Foundation, but we still haven't found the correct way to do it or the easier way to do it. So yeah, if you keep pushing it, we might do it, but we are not sure yet the benefits from it, that if they outweigh the cons or problems we might get from it.
I mean, I guess the benefits would be sort of being able to buy stuff as a commercial entity and not as a private person. Not that I think we do that at the moment, but and I guess also some maybe legal rights and stuff. I mean, currently, if Arak wrote a contract for something for NIM and then that fell through and he would go personally into that, which would kind of suck for him. But I don't think we're really handling that kind of money and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, if only we had more sponsors and donations. I'm sure we figured out how to get even more or how to better spend it. But for now, I think we are unfortunately in some low amounts of money. So, and yeah, it's not that it's personally spent. It's I don't know if you can see what's going on with Open Collective, but people get paid from Open Collective.
Yeah.
To work on stuff that they are assigned to or they wish to work for, and so on. Yeah, now I see the comment. The only cons is monthly cost of 150 euros. In Nim world, that's not a small amount, to be honest.
I mean, that depends on the country.
Oh, we have somebody else from Croatia here. Hi, Daniel or Daniel.
So, anything more?
Anybody? Nimble question is probably best answered by Dom, but he's not here anymore. So maybe ask next time. Yeah. Federico, do you have any experience with this SPI?
You mean directly on personal level?
Yeah, or professional, or you know somebody who used it.
Yes, is the one handling the donations for Debian.
Oh, I see.
And he's been doing that for decades, and the amount of donation are quite relevant. But it's also handling a number of other projects. If you go on the website under projects.
Okay, I'll pass the link to Arak, and maybe he or his accountant can work it out from there.
Yeah, that looks interesting.
I mean, these are kind of umbrella organizations that work as a fiscal sponsor, so that you don't have to necessarily incorporate as a no-profit, and you can go through them. And one of the reasons for SPI to exist is that they can receive donations in US, where the donor would not have to pay taxes and stuff like this.
Wait, you normally pay taxes on donations?
It's very complex.
Hmm.
Like sometimes you have to pay VAT through the chain, but sometimes you also have fiscal benefits in doing donation. Like in US, if a company donates money to charities, they can then detract part of the donations.
I get that for myself in Norway.
Yeah, but that works with different extents depending on the donation, where the donor is from and where the recipient is.
Yeah. I mean, I probably like that. That would be one benefit of being registered as a nonprofit, I guess. People would be able to write us as a tax rebate.
It's more complex, unfortunately. It depends a lot on the countries involved.
Yeah, of course, but I mean, that would be one of the benefits of doing it sort of right.
I mean, with the current Open Collective, they already have their own like US-based non-profit identity, open source collective, but they also take a fee of 10%. I'm not sure if the SPI does that.
As far as I know, we are talking about different scales here. I guess SPI has a little fee, probably. I would be very surprised if it was so high.
Wait, you said Open Collective takes 10%?
I'm not sure in that number.
I mean, it's what
I thought it was less.
it's what they say.
Sounds kind of high. Yeah, host fee 10%. Yeah, that's just commenting on what Juan Carlos writes in the chat. That's one thing I've seen a lot of like content creators do, like specify, oh, please, if you want to donate money, do it through this because that's the way the most money reaches us, with sort of a breakdown for which platform gives different, like takes different percentage cuts and stuff.
Yeah, but so far we are more glad if somebody donates via anything than not donating via the best option.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I mean, like if I decided like, oh yeah, okay, I want to donate, I would think about like, okay, how can I donate sort of the most efficiently? That reminds me, I should probably set up some kind of donation.
And with that, we conclude this meeting.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, homework for everybody. Consider donating via whatever you want, whatever is the most convenient for you, and please try the release candidates and report any regressions there. And now it's almost 2 hours of this meeting, and I call the end of this meeting.
Okay, sure. Goodbye.
Bye, and see you in 2 weeks' time. Hopefully, everybody will be in daylight savings time next time, and it will be 5 p.m. in Central Europe. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.